John, ready? مساء الخير وأهلا وسهلا بكم في الملتقى الرابع من برنامج مساحة معرفة في الأرشيف والمكتبة الوطنية. هذا الملتقى بعنوان معزوفة البحار، حيث نغوص في أعماق المحيط لنستكشف عجائب مملكة الكائنات البحرية. نستهل يوم جلستنا بتقديم المتحدثين. رحبوا معي بالسيدة إيزابيل أبو الهول، توم ماستل، عالم وصانع أفلام وكاتب متخصص في القصص التي تتناول العلاقة بين الإنسان والطبيعة. في كتابه الأول كيف نتحدث لغة الحيتان يستكشف أعماق المحيطات وأحدث التطورات العلمية. توم ماستل. وأخيرا وليس آخرا وكان ماتوسيان، متخصص في الموسيقى ومصمم منتجات، يعمل في مجالات الفن التفاعلي. يتميز عمله في إنشاء الموسيقى بعنصر كبير من اللعب، كما يأخذ نظرة محيرة العقل على الأشياء التي نعتقد أننا نعرفها جيدا. شكرا. Welcome our speakers on stage and we hope you enjoy this session.
Assalamu alaikum. Wonderful to see you all here, and it gives me absolute pleasure to welcome Tom Mustil and Bahakan Matosian to National Archives and National Library and Archives even in Abu Dhabi. What an amazing time we've had. And in between our morning session and our afternoon session, I think Tom and Bahakan have been out searching for whales off the coast of Abu Dhabi. So more about that later. You need no introduction, either of you. But what I wanted to say was, Tom, you are renowned as an award-winning nature photographer. So where have you gone from film to whales? And tell us a little bit about your beginnings into this whole quest.
Thank you, Isabel. So I was trained as a conservation biologist. So I did my degree in zoology and conservation, and I worked with endangered species. And then I moved into making documentaries about endangered species and people who saved them. And I did that for 15, I guess 20 years. Now, and I work with people like David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg, talking about the pressing issues of the day. And then I was kayaking in Monterey Bay. I was actually on holiday, and a humpback whale, which is that kind of whale with its tail up there, its flukes, is what you can see, breached, which is when a whale throws its body totally out of the water, and it landed on top of the kayak that I was in with my friend Charlotte, and it dragged us underwater. And actually, the whale was going to land on top of us. We learned later, but it saw us and it turned away. And its arm, I mean, humpback whale is about 30 to 40 tons. The arm of a humpback whale is the biggest arm of any animal that's ever existed on this planet. And that hit the front of the kayak about this far from Charlotte's feet. So we were very lucky to survive. But because the whale turned, its body fell just next to the kayak and only its arm, its pectoral fin, hit us. So that was quite a big moment. And we survived, and somebody filmed it. And because somebody filmed it, I learned a tremendous amount of information about this whale's life. I learned how old it was, who its mother was. I followed its migrations up and down the Californian and Mexican coast this January. And as a conservation biologist wanting to understand the lives of other species, I was very surprised by this, because how could I learn so much about one animal, one wild animal? And it seemed to me that it was because of technology, because there were humans interested videoing what was happening out on the water. And so, yes, so somebody filmed it. That was the critical thing. And in fact, we can show you that now.
Can we see the film of the humpback whale hitting the kayak that Tom and Charlotte were on? Is that possible? I'm asking up there to our lovely people in...
He knocked it over. He knocked it over, the kayak.
It's okay out
So there it is coming down. You can see the knobbles on the front of its head. They're called tubercles. And there's actually whiskers inside them. And I remember as it was above us, there's us in the water afterwards, very happy not to be dead. I could remember as it was above us in the air, looking at those knobbles and thinking, nasal tubercles. And I remember looking at the grooves on its throat and thinking, ventral pleats. Like, you know, you didn't have time to think I'm going to die. That was very obvious we were going to die, but I was just noticing those details of its body.
So did time slow down? I mean, it must have been, I think had that happened to me, first of all, I would never have been on a kayak looking at whales, but secondly,
I recommend it.
Secondly, had it happened, I think I would have had great difficulty in ever getting in the sea again. But that seemed to be the magnet you needed.
Well, I've been back kayaking there with humpback whales since. I love whales. It didn't put me off. I just thought it was amazing. I was very happy not to have died. My mother was interviewed. It went viral, and so there was all this media interest, and all these newspapers were phoning up. So my mum was interviewed, and she said to one newspaper, she hates me telling this story, but I think it's really funny. She said that she was very glad that I was alive, but if I had died, it would have been an appropriate way for me to die. Because my life was around wild animals doing silly things. But I should add, we weren't doing anything silly. We were very careful. You have to stay away from the whales. We were hitting the kayak with our hands so we thought it could hear us. We were trying to make sure we didn't interfere with its life. We just wanted to observe and not like mess with them. But, you know, they can't see you when they're coming up to breach. And it totally changed my life. Firstly, everybody who had any interesting whale stories wanted to tell me about them. And there are other people who, in a kind of weird club, who've had these near-death experiences with whales. And I learned much more interesting stories than my ones about other people who had found whales that were entangled in nets, and they'd cut them out of them, and the whales had let them for hours in the open sea, cut into their flesh to get the nets off them. Just imagine, like, if you were to find like a dog or a cat caught in some plastic rubbish, and you walk up to it and you try and cut it out, it will try and bite you. Now imagine that with an animal the size of 3 Tyrannosaurus rexes, but these whales just let sometimes people seem to understand. So I became much more curious about whales, and I spent 7 years traveling around with whales and people who study whales and other endangered species, trying to understand how technology was changing our relationship to them. And everywhere we went, it seemed like as I was doing this artificial intelligence was being used. Obviously, we've trained AIs to identify people. We've trained AIs to find patterns in our communications vocally. You can transcribe your conversations from your meetings because the AIs can find patterns in what you're saying to each other. You can use Google Translate to translate between human languages because AIs can find patterns in human languages. So now AI is being used along with all of these new recordings because everybody carries phones with them and other miniature recording devices, and it's changing how we relate to nature. And that's what the book is about.
And this whale, does he have a name? I know he's 14 and he's a male, but have you given him a name?
Well, I feel very cruel about this because when I made a documentary for the BBC and PBS, and we thought maybe we could try and find out who the whale is. And it was only at the end of that we did. And I didn't think we would. I thought we'd narrow it down to a number of whales that were around. So we called this whale Prime Suspect. But I think that's a really horrible thing to call a whale. I mean, seeing as he avoided killing us, he's not, in a way, he didn't, injure us. So, and also what I've learned since is that actually whales, dolphins and humpback whales, lots of species seem to have names for themselves. So that is definitely not his name, even though that's what I call him, but it's very likely he does have a name.
Within whale language, he will have
speak.
a name and he will answer to that name.
Yes,
Yes. Can I just ask you to just do a few whale sounds and we'll see if that's his name, please?
As in impressions or with
Impressions,
Okay.
not like we had the little boy this morning, please, a little
That
bit
was-
better.
I guess like
That's not prime suspect.
or
I
like
can
you
tell
could do
you.
like little bubbles. Like, bloop, bloop. They have an astonishing vocal range, so they would be very upset by what I just did. But they can actually vocalize below human hearing through our vocal range and above human hearing, and they can hear a wider spectrum of sound too.
And on sound, Bahakan, how did you become involved with Tom and Wales? How far back did it go?
Well, Tom and I were actually at school together from the age of 11, but we didn't actually start working together until much later. I studied music and product design, and I grew up in a very musical family, but not the usual musical family. My father was a composer, composing mainly experimental electroacoustic music, contemporary classical. He was a student of Stockhausen. And so I grew up with very, very, very strange frequencies and sounds in my house, not your average music. And he also built interactive installations, sound installations. And I grew up helping him build these and rig them. And so I've always been fascinated in what frequencies, not just sound and music, but what specific frequencies can do to humans and how humans make them. And I guess, very narrowly been thinking so much about human music. And on discovering Tom was making documentaries and writing books, I got quite interested in his various different stories. And much later on, we decided to team up. And being a DJ myself and a producer and a composer, I was naturally drawn to amplifying these sounds as loudly as possible, in as many places as possible, so as many people can hear them as possible, because it changed my life. So I think it will change many others.
Thank you for that, because it is, you are very much, you need each other for this, for it to be a real way of giving us a Wales song bath. But I've got a question, and then I think our audience would love to see the compilation film you made. You can tell us a little bit about that. But is it true that Wales once walked on land, that they had legs or paws or something?
Yes, and in fact, they still do have legs. So Wales, about 55 million years ago, I think it's in Pakistan, is the last ancestor of the whales that we've found so far. Were sort of little dog-like creatures about this big with 4 legs with little hooves, but teeth. They ate meat, they were predators that gradually started, because we all came from the ocean. And so our ancestors and the whale ancestors both lived on land together, but then what became whales went into the oceans. So they still have, when they're in the womb, they still have hair on their bodies like other mammals, and they have nipples, and they feed each other milk when they're young. And they have lots of other mammal features. They have whiskers. Yes.
So unlike the dugong or the sea cow, which is in Arabic, it's Bukar al-Bahar. Yes. So which are herbivores and have got some connection, but they would have been more like the cow rather than the dog.
Yes.
On land.
Exactly. And that's what they've sort of, so all whales and dolphins and porpoises, and there's about 90 species, 21 to 23 of live around here, off the UAE and in the Gulf region in general. So that's a quarter of all the world species of whales, dolphin, and porpoise are here, which is really unusual. They all eat meat. They're all predators. So you can tell what they eat by looking at their teeth. So if they've got little tiny pointy teeth, they tend to catch individual fish. And if they've got big slashy teeth like killer whales, they tend to rip into things that they need to bleed to death, like seals, or unfortunately, killer whales come them. And then the biggest whales have been able to grow so big because they have, instead of teeth, these plates of what's called baleen. It's the same material as the keratin in your fingernail and hair. And they have like sort of toothbrushes in their mouths, and they take big gulps of hundreds, thousands of fish or krill, which are like little kind of shrimp-like creatures. and they can eat many, many of them at once, and they get all of their water from them and all of their nutrition from them.
Thank you. So can you show us, just give us a little explanation about this wonderful collage documentary you've put about whales around, or not whales, over to you, around the UK sea.
Sure. Well, this is it's a very unusual film for me. I normally film things as a filmmaker, but I'm very interested in sustainability in film. You know, in television and film is an infinitely recyclable product. Yet, when I make wildlife films, and my colleagues, often we film 100 hours and only 1 hour goes on TV. And I think of all these thousands, millions of hours of things people have filmed, but no one's seen or been able to use. And I think it would be, in another industry, people would think it was crazy. Like if a farmer grew 100 carrots and only gave you one, you'd say that was a terrible, unsustainable industry. Why aren't you giving away the other carrots to somebody? Lots of work in sustainability in film. And this was a project to try and see whether we could creatively unlock lots of existing materials. So we spoke to filmmakers all around the United Kingdom and said, give us footage that for you is what you think of the ocean, to show many different perspectives, because perspectives is what I'm most interested in, where people meet nature. And this is what me and Vaharkan are doing. It's the perspectives of different whales told through their voices. So this film is a mixture of videos that were given to us from people all over the UK, and it was all donated. The music was donated by Bicep, and all of the words you see were words written by different people on Twitter or people who wrote to us about the sea from all their different backgrounds. So I didn't really do anything apart from put it together, but I really enjoyed making it. It's called Thank You Sea, so it's a love letter to the ocean.
Can we see Thank You Sea, please? See the film up there. Each time I've seen that now, that's the third time. Each time I see something new, it's incredible. It's got, and the messages there are so meaningful and so emotional, that the people's connection with the sea. But how to speak whale? So you believe, and I think many others believe, that whales can communicate, but we are not at a stage yet when we can decipher. We don't have the hieroglyphics for whales yet, but hopefully that will come. And I would love for you and Vahakan to play some of the whale sounds, and we can, you know, see if we can understand anything. Whether, as you said, how much percentage of there are of whale species living in the Arabian Seas?
I think it's about a quarter.
A quarter. So maybe some of it has a connection to us in the way I remember the birds played sounded very similar when you slowed it down. So beautiful journey again.
Thank you. Could you turn the projector off, please?
Can you turn that light off and the screen? Thank you.
أهلا وسهلا بكم في أغنية الهيتان المناخ.
Ladies and gentlemen, please close your eyes. We're going underwater. Few human ears have heard the sounds of other lives lived beneath the waves. Sound travels faster in water than in air, and often further too. Even here, 3 miles below the waves, a hydrophone can pick up the sound of rain falling on the distant surface. We can hear the rumble of underwater landslides and earthquakes. And when lightning strikes the surface, it rings in the deep. The sounds of weather and geology. Can you guys hear it well enough out there? It doesn't sound as loud as last time. Could we have some more level in the booth? It feels very, very quiet. Let's try to, sorry, I'm just going to pause it for a second, because when we played it last time, it was really loud, wasn't it? It's now, does it feel quite quiet? I can't see. Is it good? Oh,
It's actually softer.
you're in trance? Oh, okay. Let me take you back deep beneath the waves. Please close your eyes again. Great. This is a blue whale's voice, the most powerful on the planet. When they speak, their voices can travel across entire oceans. Their relatives, the fin whales' voices, are so strong they can penetrate the Earth's crust. Could you turn it up quite a bit, if that's all right? And because you want to rumble, you make it a bit louder, please. A bit more. If you could hear your friends 500 miles away, would you ever feel alone? Although whales have been speaking to each other for far longer than we have, for tens of millions of years, we've only been able to hear them recently. You are floating in the far north of the Pacific Ocean. This is the voice of a bowhead whale. They can live for over 200 years. This recording could be from a whale that lived through the French Revolution. In one bowhead lifetime, we've learned all these things about whales. They're mammals, like us. They suckle their young on milk. They have huge brains, whiskers, excellent hearing, and virtuoso voices. There are 90-odd species, at least 21 of which are found in the UAE and Arabian Sea. But what have we learned about their lives? We know they experience menopause, but they care for the old and disabled. They compose songs that change each year. They play games, blow bubble art, pass our tests for self-consciousness and communication. They have mysterious fashions. Some orcas had a 3-month craze for wearing salmon as hats. Other killer whales have recently taught each other to sink our sailing boats off Gibraltar. No one knows why. In many places, humans and whales hunt and play together. Perhaps there are new chances to be friends with whales today. But for a long time, people didn't think that whales made much sound at all. Now we know they use their voices to teach each other their unique ways of living. Scientists call these cultures. This is the voice of a mysterious whale known as 52. They are called 52 because he or she calls out 52 hertz, a frequency no other whale uses. They've dubbed this whale the loneliest whale. And these whale voices are just from the British Isles. The recordings you're listening to were given to me by scientists I met and spent time with across the world. These are humpback whales singing. This is a nightingale I recorded late one night in England. Listen as Bahar plays it slowed down. And slows it even further. I think it's very like a humpback whale. Roger Payne, who discovered whale song, felt that music was everywhere in nature, and in fact, perhaps the universe was a form of music. This is the Weddell seal. They've even been recorded calling out like this in their sleep. Are they dreaming? We've also discovered the seas are full of the chirps, buzzes, and choruses of fish. Some click to their mates and families. Others hum on their nests. And some swim miles to underwater mountains and call out all together. This is to you today. We killed 3 million whales. 1,000 blue whales were hunted here in the Gulf region alone. This stage is 15 meters across. A blue whale is 25 meters long. Imagine 1,000 blue whales. At one point, there were only a few hundred left in the world. It looked like they would go extinct, and the science was clear. I think there is a strong parallel today with climate change and the direction of travel we're going in. We feel it's inevitable that we'll keep on burning fossil fuels. But this whale story, I think, can show us that we can change. So what stopped us from destroying them? What stopped us from killing them? Sorry, humpback whales don't normally sound this unpleasant. There's a problem with the sound cable. So imagine they sound more beautiful for this story. What stopped us killing them was listening to them. In 1971, Roger Payne, my mentor, proved that humpback whales sang. He shared this discovery with the world. On stage here with me and Isabel is a copy of National Geographic magazine, with the whale song you're listening to in it. This was the biggest album pressing in music history. When people heard their beautiful voices, they cared more about them. Activists protested, industries changed, whalers became whale watchers, and whale populations recovered. The Save the Whales movement was the first great success story in environmentalism, and it showed that we can change. Baharkin and I went to the sea on Sunday and met a conservationist called Major Ali. He studies the marine life, and he told us of orcas that swim past these shores hunting manatees, and we swam in the waters that we share with these giants. Major Ali and his team found over 500 species of plants, insects, reptiles, coral, sharks, and other animals just in the small strip of coastline that he surveyed. Right now, the seas are warming. Cetaceans are already climate migrants. They indicate whole ecosystems are already being upended because we've burnt so much coal, oil, and gas. This is very scary. This is a hot place. If we continue burning fossil fuels and it becomes hotter, it will become unsurvivable for us and the other animals. The Gulf today hosts a totally unique whale culture, the only non-migrating humpback whales in the world. Can they survive? Will we stop burning these fuels in time? There is no air conditioning in the sea. We have also learned that whales are vital climate allies. Over their lives, they drive enormous iron and carbon cycles, holding together the health of ecosystems we depend on. With living whales, we all stand more chance of surviving this crisis. Dr. Roger Payne died a few months ago. Just before he passed, I asked him how to listen to whales, and I'd like to end with a recording of what he told me. Oh dear. One moment.
You should listen attentively. You should listen silently. You should listen with nothing else to distract you. That's the way to listen.
So we'll end just by listening to some humpback whale with that advice from Roger in mind. Thank you very much.
Can we have the house lights up, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom and Vahakan, again for a wonderful whale song. We're now open for questions. So please fire away if you have a question.
We can probably hear you from here.
For the sake of the video. Have you ever had, earlier in the talk, you imitated the sound of a whale. Have you ever had a back and forth or a response from a whale?
I've filmed whales in the sea a number of times, and including humpback whales singing. I've often made sounds into my throat, like I'm not sure if they've ever noticed or cared, but I do know there's a scientist called Jord Reichen, and he has a boat up in northern Norway, and he's rigged up that boat so it has both a hydrophone, an underwater microphone, and an underwater speaker backwards and forwards with the orcas and with the humpbacks. And I've watched videos that he's shown me from northern Norway of them coming and imitating each other backwards and forwards. There's no information being passed, but the whales come over and they're interested in the boat and they seem to imitate the sounds that the people are making. The people made sounds that the whales don't normally make. So that's how they know that they're making an imitation rather than just doing their normal sounds. But myself, I've just been in the sea when they've been vocalizing. I've been in the sea with, with sperm whales, and they make this huge click, and it feels like somebody tapping you with a ruler. And I've been with humpbacks singing, and your nose fizzes and your sinuses and your mask and your chest all vibrate from the air. So you feel like you're part of their song. It's wonderful. Does the behavior of the whale change from area to area? Yes, very good question. And yes, it does. I think even in one area where, for instance, with sperm whales, they look the same to us. They live in tight family groups, and they can overlap and live in the same area, two family groups. But the scientists even can hear the difference between the way they talk, and they call them acoustic clans. So clans, like family groups, separated by how they sound. And the different acoustic clans not only have different ways of talking, but they also have different ways of living. So they might hunt in their own way, and they might move around in their own way and defend themselves in their own way. So that's why the scientists feel so confident in calling it culture. And they teach each other how to live in the different ways they live using their different voices. So even in the same place, they're different, but in different places, they're very different, and they do strange things. In off Australia, I wrote about this in the book. There were killer whales that learned to hunt with people, and they would hunt together, and they would take the human whalers out to hunt the other whales that came past, and they'd share the dead whale, and the killer whales would eat the tongue, and then the humans would take the whale to the shore, and they called this the law of the tongue. And they did a genetic test on those killer whales recently, a few weeks ago, and found they were a totally unique population. And no other whale seems to have done them. But the people who live there, the indigenous Australians, they have stories in their cultures going back thousands of years about living with those whales. In Brazil now, there are dolphins that men go fishing with. And not only do the dolphins that fish with the men live longer, but they have different ways of talking than the other dolphins that live there. We can tell their ways of talking apart. So yes.
How close do you need to get to capture a clear recording of the whale's sound?
How close? You actually don't need to be close at all. If you go to somewhere like Hawaii, where they sing all the time, you can hear them from miles away. The most important thing is not how close you are to the whale, is whether there's any other things going on, because boats are so loud. You can hear a boat from far further away, and it totally interferes. And it's when you start trying to record whales that you realize how full of sound the sea is. But I mean, we have a hydrophone here. We were hoping to go out, but often you can just hear them with your own ears. You don't need special equipment. You just put your head underwater. We just don't put our head underwater very often.
I've got a question. I'm just interested because whales are mammals. So the mother suckles the young calf, the whale calf, and that would mean that its lips have to exercise quite strongly to take the milk, which is what humans, other mammals do. So is that part of how they make their sounds? I mean, have we got any recordings of a mother whale to a baby whale and back again?
So, I mean, like the mammary glands of whales are very interesting. The breasts of the whales can fire the milk out in jets. To get through the water, they fire it like a water pistol. And the young whales have a groove in their tongue. So, you know, like those aircraft that can refuel in mid-flight, it's like that underwater. So it shoots it into its mouth. And if you see them feeding underwater, often there's lots of milk around. But they don't talk using their mouth here. They talk deep in their throat because they don't open and close their mouth to modify their sounds like I'm doing. All of the modification happens without using this part. This is just for eating in the mothers. It's the throat of those big whales that makes the sound. Or in the toothed whales, it's all the nose and that area. But the mothers and the whales talk to each other, and the children, so the babies, right, the calves, sorry, using human words, the calves and the cows. So when for instance, with gray whales, the mothers are very scared that the killer whales will come and eat their calves. And they've noticed that the mothers will take the calves close to the shore and they change the way they communicate. They kind of whisper to them. So they communicate very quietly and they're kind of like in frequencies that don't travel far. That's why whispering is very high pitched because it doesn't travel. Deep pitched things travel further, but they're less clear. And they also are near the shore. And the scientists believe that the sound of the waves, they're using that like to mask, to hide the fact that they're there so the killers don't find them.
That's fantastic. And certainly that about the mammary glands and the firing out of milk is just incredible. All these different ways that whales have evolved and are able to manage in water.
Hi, Tom. I've got a question, which is I'm not a conservationist personally, and I'm also not in charge of any large organizations that make decisions. As a normal sort of citizen or someone who really wants to help out to save the oceans and protect sea wildlife, what could I do as a sort of normal person?
Oh, Bahakan, there's so many things you could do. Though I would say I don't think you're a normal person as a highest compliment. I think there are many ways to help as there are as many different people. And so I think always when trying to think how to contribute, think what do you want to do? What's your inclination? What's your passion? And what's your power? If you can influence other people, if you have time that you can give, if you have a skill set, if you are very good at accounting, most biologists are terrible at accounting. Go and help a conservation organization do their accounting. If you want to spend your life at sea watching whales, go to the ocean and find the people who are watching whales and ask them and spend time around them. If you have no time, if you've got money, you can give that. Or you can join and give your support, because there are many organizations that have been doing this, like whale and dolphin conservation, who I'm an ambassador for, or the World Cetacean Alliance, or Oceana, or other marine charities, and just see what they're doing and support them. But I think especially in your local region, you can go and find people who are working and say, what do you need? But the more time you spend near the ocean and around the animals and the environments that you want to contribute to, the more apparent it becomes. It's very hard to think of it from here, but when you're there, it's kind of obvious. You'll see like, oh, there's plastic everywhere. I want to sort of help with the plastic. Or nobody gets to see these whales and care about them. I want to bring people to take them to the whales to care about them. Or people are hunting the whales here. How can I help the people who are hunting the whales have different jobs that don't require them to hunt whales? You know.
Thank you so much, Tom and Vahakan.
I have a question.
Sorry, yes.
Me.
Sorry.
It's just extending to what Vakan asked, but like all this amazing research that's being done, does it reflect in curriculums for school children? Does it get there? Because I don't know. I mean,
Is it? I don't know if children are. I think probably, like when I was at school, nobody really taught me much about the behaviors and cultures of other animals. I think because it was still, well, most of the biology I was taught at school was how cells worked and physiology, and it was very kind of, it wasn't very behavior related. Most of the animal behavior I learned, even when I went to the University of Cambridge, I was still relying sometimes on nature documentaries that I'd watched before. So I worked for the Natural History Unit in the BBC, and often that is a very direct route and a faster route of information coming from scientists than waiting for it to filter through curricula. Because normally what happens is we'd hear a story about a scientist who'd filmed an animal doing an exciting thing, and we go off and try and film it. And if it succeeded, it would go on TV really soon. And that process is just like sped up, because now I learn a lot about the behaviors of other species from social media. I don't know if you saw, but recently there was a film called Nature's Great Migrations, and there was a clip that was on National Geographic, and it showed a humpback whale's birth. That was one of the first times they'd filmed that. But they also found a humpback whale that had been caught in nets, and it was dying, and it was covered, its skin was covered in parasites, and it couldn't move, and it was starving to death, and it was just on the surface, and it was even struggling to try and get to the surface to breathe, because whales can drown if they can't swim up to the surface to breathe. And they filmed it, and another whale swam across and joined it and spent days with it and swimming underneath it and lifting it up to the surface to breathe and being with it. And there was no interpretation for this other than it was trying to help it. And when I was in Monterey Bay in California, I filmed a gray whale calf had been killed by some killer whales, and they were eating it. And I filmed 2 humpback whales coming from 3 miles away, and they fought off this big pod of over 12 killer whales, thrashing their tails, blowing out underwater, thrashing their arms around. And they fought to protect the dead body of the calf of this other species. And actually, a scientist called Robert Pittman did a survey, and he found that there were over 150 incidents of humpback whales coming to protect other species. They protect other humpbacks, but they also protected seals and dolphins, lifting them up on their noses. They protected giant ocean sunfish. I interviewed a woman who claimed humpback whales had protected her from a tiger shark. So I think a lot of the time, the direct way that we find out about these things is now from someone like me or you seeing it and filming it and putting it on YouTube. And then the curricula have to catch up and write it down because everyone's noticed it. So I think that's fun.
I just want to say, I think that was a really good question, because if we had been taught this at school, we'd have probably all been marine biologists, wouldn't we? Just because it is so fascinating. There's so much unknown facts about sea creatures, and it's the great unknown. So thank you so much, Tom and Vahakim, for bringing it to life, both under the sea and through film and through the wonderful sounds that we've been privileged to hear today. And thanks to the National Library and Archives for hosting today's thing. And can I ask the team just to come up on stage to have a photograph with our wonderful speakers today, please?
Yes, please.
Team members, please come.
And also, if like, you should still be a marine biologist. It's not too late for any of you.
Not too late.
Because
no.
here you have so many of these species, and almost all of these populations are totally unstudied. And we have lacked the tools all over the world to study them until recently. But now those tools are cheap. Now people are interested, and now we have the internet to share what we discover. So it's a really exciting time. So go for it.
Action point. Which universities in the UAE, apart from Khor Khan, have marine biology? Let's find out. That's a really good point. I know Khor Khan does. We're meeting Khor Khan. We can ask them later in the week. Thank you all, everyone. Please come up for a photo. Thank you.
We also have, guys,